Hello and good evening. It is Sunday the 8th and we're here at the Nobodere Beach. And if you are interested in what we're doing, please subscribe to the YouTube and or the Facebook. This first talk, and there are going to be two of them, they're on the same subject, but one is going to be micro and one is going to be macro. The first one is going to be about Nantucket, although it has parts that will be applicable to Massachusetts, to the region, to the country, maybe to the world. Regarding the COVID situation here on Nantucket, I don't have a great deal to add in terms of practical measures beyond what has been recommended by the state and by the town. I can reiterate, I can reemphasize, wash your hands as much as possible and thoroughly with the proper products, just like with influenza, but even more intensely. And wear masks, because yes, the delivery system is fairly similar from influenza to COVID, but my understanding is that the aerosolization, if I may make an active verb, is more intense with COVID so that it can project further and linger longer. And that's a key difference between influenza and COVID. So COVID is absolutely as contagious as your average yearly influenza. And then beyond that, and look at the statistics from the United States over the last decade at how many tens of millions of Americans get seasonal influenza. And many of them have partial immunity from having had influenza previously in their lives. And yet we have a tremendous infection rate. And your average influenza is far less pernicious. You have to go back, the 1968 influenza, 58 and then 67, I think. If you look at those two influenzas, and incidentally, I nearly lost my mother's mother to that when she was in her 50s. Yes, influenza can be utterly lethal, but generally it's not. But let us get back to things. I don't really have anything to offer in terms of masks. I think everybody understands, and it has been emphasized and emphasized and re-emphasized, and hand washing, and not collecting in groups under any circumstance. I do have a couple of practical things that I've been thinking of. I've mentioned in past videos having to do with Nantucket and COVID, talking about opening windows. If you can do it, if you feel you live in a place that's safe to have your windows open at night. And even on Nantucket, I know there are locations where people might not feel that way. Most people might not think anything about that. And there are certain places where they might not be comfortable. Okay. Going beyond that, two critical points. Not just opening windows, but having cross ventilation. Meaning if you have a window that faces to the east and you have a window that faces to the south, you open them and you get this cross draft. It's very, very different than having one window open. Unless there's a lot of wind, just blustery, swirling wind or wind coming directly in, that doesn't ventilate things all that much. So what I would suggest is have cross ventilation. It's going to make things colder. And I want to say, I can see, and I'm taking this all from the town and from the Inquirer and Mirror, the majority of cases have come from the Hispanic community. The Hispanic community is a minority here, a large minority, but still very much a minority. So if you go to per capita, it's a much, much higher incidence of the disease. So I think it is absolutely essential, and I realize there are Hispanics who have moved here recently or moved from another part of the United States where it's much warmer. The idea of having windows open in the autumn, in the winter, it's hard enough to adjust to the air outside, but to actually be cold inside is miserable. Well, I think the best thing you can do for the disease is to wear much warmer clothing inside. Have cross ventilation whenever you can. And you may even have rooms where you have 3 windows and do that. But certainly 2 that are perpendicular. Okay? Meaning north and west, north and east, south and west, south and east. It will make a huge difference. The other thing in connection to that, I would call compartmentalization, which is something I've done for years, where you have a room like that's totally aerated, but you close doors and you keep heat in other rooms that maybe don't have people in those rooms very much, but they could go in and warm up briefly, or 1 or 2 people. You don't have big groups. People don't sit next to each other. Do that. And it may be uncomfortable, it may be complicated, but it will save you money if you're losing heat. I would also suggest turning heat down a little bit lower, so that you're not losing the fuel and a lot of money on your heating bills. I know what that's like. I've seen that happen, where people have the heat on normally and they have the windows open in the winter. Okay, so it's called cross ventilation in combination with compartmentalization, where like a ship, when you don't want water coming in, for the ship, you're doing everything you can to keep the ship from sinking, like a battleship that's hit with a torpedo. You try to block water from going. It's the same thing with the air. You can have a very, very intensely aerated room with the wind going through, and then rooms that are quiet where there's dead air, but you don't have people in them very much, and not for a long time, and not in any kind of group. Okay, so those are the 2 main things. And there's one more thing that I wanted to say before we go from this. It also will help with influenza, and it will help with a common cold, and it will help with other things as well, with bacterial things. You want air circulation, intense air circulation. And you have to make sure you get it right, because with certain things, a little bit of circulation can actually make things worse. And I explained that in the video a while ago. So you definitely have to get the calculus right on that. But by and large, it is that's the only thing that I can come up with right now that I could add to what is said by everyone else. Okay? So good luck. God bless. All the best. And we're in a terrible time. It's difficult here on Nantucket. In Massachusetts, on Cape Cod in Massachusetts, everything has gone, we're back to the spring, basically. And look at the nation. So, all the best.